Well, it's Monday morning, and you know, once you hear that song playing, it's time for Inspector Michelle Lewis to join us representing the TTPS. Good morning to you, Inspector Lewis.
Good morning, Marcus. How are you doing this morning?
I'm all right. How are you?
I am good. Morning to all your viewing audience as
I'm
well.
sure they welcome seeing you every Monday morning.
Great to be here.
So, Inspector, what we're chatting about this morning is the powers that the police have.
Yes, we're looking at the powers that the police have generally.
Generally speaking. So give me a rundown, an idea of some of them, because I imagine we won't be able to get into all of them in a short time.
No, we won't be able to get into all of them, but it is important to know that police officers, when they enter into the police training academy and they go through the training, the powers that are conferred onto them is either through the magistrate or justice,
right,
or according to the laws of the land.
Right.
And so the police officers operate within that, having been trained in the academy for several months. And particularly if you're in a particular section, then you get further training.
Specialized
training. So
just to be clear on that aspect of things, when you're in the academy, because I've never been, right? So when you're in the academy, you get trained in terms of what the law is and how to enforce it.
Yes, you do. You get a training in what the law is. So what are the ingredients in relation to something? It's an offense, be it a trafficking offense or a criminal offense, a breach of the peace, or anything like that, right? So the instructors at the academy will go through pertinent and important basic, in the first instance, to guide a recruit as to what you're looking for in relation to anything. Right? And when I say anything, I mean any type of offense, be it trafficking, criminal, or anything. Because in some cases, you can warn the person, and in other cases, you may issue a fixed penalty notice. In other cases, you can arrest without warrant. In some cases, you arrest with a warrant. Right?
So you learn the specifics of the law when it comes to how you can do whichever choice of enforcement that you choose.
So when you use the uniform, the police uniform, which is gazetted, the grey and blue like we know it, patrol order number 2, it gives you a certain amount of power and command on the street. So that when persons see that, they expect, based on the law of the land, that you will be in obedience to the law of the land, because what you're seeing is a representation of the law. Right? You're seeing a representation of the law. And I say grey and blue, but of course for women police it will be blue, you know, the different colors as the case may be.
And then we have the khaki ones who definitely have more power than the grey and blue.
Well, the officer, whichever rank, still has the power of a constable. Because the commissioner of a police is a constable. In law.
In law, I understand.
So generally, so for example, someone may have a police officer in uniform place up his right hand and gives instruction for you to stop. You know what it means. You ought to know what it means because you would have gotten your driver's permit. So if it is the officer is giving you that directive and you fail to, you are actually not in compliance with the law and the instruction of a police officer in uniform, even though it may have a traffic light there. Right? Even though it may have a traffic light.
So the police officer would override the traffic light?
The police officer in uniform, right? Will override, especially sometimes if it's not working, you'll see an officer, but sometimes it might have had an accident higher up, and so the police might go there to regulate the traffic to cause it to come, even though it has a traffic light. And so sometimes when the officers are conducting traffic exercises, they may notice and observe certain traffic violations, maybe your lights, things in the back of your vehicle, you did not have on your seatbelt and that kind of thing. So we want to encourage persons that once an officer, as you see, in uniform, to obey the officer in uniform. Now, there are times when, for example, you may feel that the instruction of the police officer appears in your view, in your hearing, to be
incredulous in some circumstances.
Or unjustified. Right? So that you may have a challenge with what they're saying or how they are saying it to you. Right? And the law provides, it gives you that platform as well where you can take that kind of redress.
But it's essentially comply and then complain. Because you're saying that we have to follow the instruction given by the police at the time, but we can then take our concerns and our complaints to the PCA.
Not just to the PCA. For example, if it is a traffic violation, let's say, for example, you get a ticket. So you can contest the ticket. So you have a notice to contest within a certain amount of days, I think 14 under this new system. So if you're not contesting, you pay the ticket within the month. But if you're contesting, you go online and you follow the direction at the back of the ticket and you contest, you challenge it, and you say why. Because with a ticket, not just is the fixed penalty notice, meaning the money, but there are also demerit points attached to it.
yeah.
And if you know that what the officer has indicated to you in his opinion is incorrect, you have the right to challenge it in court. And in the magistrate court, meaning that you don't have to get an attorney to represent you. You can represent yourself with your evidence.
Right.
Right? Because sometimes when people hear court, they say, well, I didn't have money to pay a lawyer. You know, so in the magistrate court, you can represent yourself, the magistrate will hear you, and the magistrate will determine the matter.
Right.
Right, so that there is that redress where, for example, you think that you got a ticket that it was unreasonable.
But this is more of the minor one where, I mean, we see people encountering a situation on a daily basis where we have traffic violations and the police there and present to be able to say, well, yes, you've violated the law, or, you know, we can go back and forth about it, but they are going to give you this ticket and you can contest it in court or you can pay the ticket afterwards, right?
Right.
That's a regular, everyday run-of-the-mill one. Recently, we saw a very interesting story where, I don't remember his name right now, I'm so sorry about that. The gentleman who just became a lawyer, and he went to court to protest against the police breaking into his house because of where he lived. They assumed that they were involved in criminal activity. And he went through that whole process to get some sort of redress, or is going through that process to get some sort of redress now. But everybody else wouldn't be that fortunate because you can't go and represent yourself in that court, can you?
In the magistrate court?
And if you go to say, well, if I, for example, if the police were to break down my door and find nothing, unwarranted, or even, let's say unwarranted, and they decide that they can do that because they suspect, or whatever the case may be, and then you come in and you find nothing, how do I get redress in a situation like that?
Right, so the police officers, so there are different circumstances. There's the Firearms Act. Right, there's hot pursuit, which apparently, so that eliminates that, right?
Right, obviously.
But the officers would have had a warrant, which would have shown the owner of the property, right? So you know it's authentic. You would have seen the signature of the justice of the peace, as the case may be. In some cases, they give you a copy. It's not in law, but for best practice, now we adopt the approach where we actually give you a copy of the warrant, right?
Right.
So that you have that and you see what the officers were actually looking for. So they would have had a report and investigation that they are going through it. It have times when, for example, persons who are known to the police, they go to their home and they have nothing there.
Right.
Doesn't mean that they are not known to the police. It just means that the items are not there. Such persons can also take the point and the challenge that, well, the officers came by me, they broke down my door, and they got nothing.
Right.
It doesn't mean that intel through whichever agency in the police service or team in the organization didn't have the information there. Just at that time when they hit,
so do you think there's a way that we can improve the efficiency of that in terms of when the intel comes and how we hit? Is there, do you think technology can help, or how do we improve that efficiency?
Well, intel helps. Intel helps a lot. Not technology always does, but technology also sometimes is a problem as well, right? Okay. Because it's also the fastest way to say that the police are coming.
Right.
Right? And so when you have lookouts and runners, as we know happens in the criminal circle, they are the ones also that will say to the person that police coming.
On the way.
Right. Yeah. So that by the time the officers reach there, because it's not one vehicle coming, it's not two vehicles, right? So by the time the officers reach, it doesn't mean that the investigation wasn't a comprehensive and a good one. Yeah. In those cases, persons sometimes don't go to PCA and they'll go to complaints and they'll go to PSB as well and make their report. And so it's now the responsibility of those agencies, PCA, PSB, complaints, to do the investigation and to determine if it was that what the officers did was correct and valid, or whether it was unjustified because they're attacking this person in particular or have an issue with this person and for whatever other reasons, right? So that the actions of the police must be justified in accordance with the law, in accordance to the document that the court would have given to them and what is specific in it and the law. And so whether the officer is in plain clothes, because in warrant and searches and stuff like that, you'll get plain clothes and uniform. You get one officer in uniform and then the plain clothes. So the officers, in most cases, in all cases, let me say, go according to the law, right? It's just that depending on what section it is, you would see a variation of the type of procedure. Right? So we just want to encourage persons to
comply.
To comply. And there are avenues if you want to complain, to complain. Yeah. We also want to encourage members of the public that if you see something, still say something. Still continue to partner with us. Dial 999-555-800-TIPS. And of course, the number that is connected to the Office of the Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner of Police, 736 TTPS. Ruckus, it was a pleasure being here. Thanks for having us. Have a wonderful week.
You too. Take care. You. On that note, as Inspector, I'll wrap up these segment for yourselves. So we take a break and come back with more. Stay tuned.